All right, let's get into one of the greatest stories ever written about ambition, creation, and what happens when it all goes wrong. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. We're going to look at this not just as a spooky horror story, but as a really deep warning about what obsession can do to a person.
So, our story doesn't start where you think it would, with some mad scientist. No, it starts with an explorer, Captain Robert Walton. He's writing letters to his sister from the middle of the Arctic, and he says something absolutely chilling. He basically admits that a human life is a small price to pay for the knowledge he's after. That mindset right there, that the goal is worth any cost, that is the key to this entire novel.
Walton's quest for glory gets put on hold by something pretty strange. He finds a man nearly frozen to death on a floating piece of ice, chasing something. And this broken stranger is about to tell Walton a story, a warning about what happens when that kind of ambition goes way, way too far.
The whole novel is what's called a frame narrative. It starts and ends with these letters from Captain Walton, who's dead set on reaching the North Pole. He's lonely, sure, but he's convinced he was made for some great purpose. And then, out there in the middle of nowhere, he finds someone who seems to understand that feeling all too well.
This setup makes Walton and Victor Frankenstein perfect mirrors of each other. You see, Walton is who Victor used to be, full of hope, hungry for glory, and Victor, he's the warning sign of who Walton could become, a complete wreck, destroyed by that same ambition, hunting a daemon himself created. Victor looks at this ambitious captain and sees himself. He sees that same fire, that same madness. And so he decides to tell his story. Not for fame, not for pity, but as a direct warning to Walton. Hey, turn back now, before you end up like me. And that's when Victor's story, the heart of the novel, truly begins. Victor's story starts back in Geneva, and honestly, he describes a pretty perfect childhood. He had loving parents, an adopted cousin, Elizabeth, who he was meant to marry, and a best friend, Henry Clerval. Everything seems idyllic, but even in this perfect setting, we start to see the first hints of his intense personality. Growing up, Victor was surrounded by people who could have balanced him out. You had Elizabeth, who was his calm, gentle counterpart, totally into poetry and the beauty of nature. Then you had Henry, his moral compass, who was all about adventure and being a good person. But Victor was different. He was intense, passionate, and he wasn't content to just admire the world. He wanted to uncover its physical secrets. He wanted to conquer it. The first big turning point happens when he's 13. He's stuck inside on a rainy day and finds a book by an old alchemist, Cornelius Agrippa. To him, modern science seemed, kind of boring. But these old guys, they were promising the ultimate power, the ability to create life, to cheat death. And he becomes completely obsessed with these wild fancies. And right here, this is a huge moment. His dad just casually dismisses the book, saying it is sad trash. A different kid might have listened, but Victor, no. He feels totally misunderstood. And that single comment just fuels his secret obsession. It's the first real sign of his massive ego. He thinks he knows better, and he dives into this forbidden knowledge even harder because his dad told him not to. So years later, Victor's about to head off to university. But right before he leaves, tragedy hits. His mother dies of scarlet fever. This loss just hardens his resolve to figure out how to conquer death. And when he gets to university, that ambition spirals into a dangerous, all-consuming obsession. Things go downhill fast. A professor shows him that modern chemistry can do what the alchemists only dreamed of. And that's it. He's hooked. He locks himself away for 2 years, doesn't talk to anyone. He starts crossing all sorts of moral lines, digging up graves, hanging out in slaughterhouses for parts, all leading up to the final act in his workshop of filthy creation. And this quote tells you everything you need to know about his mindset. This is pure ego, pure hubris. He's not thinking about whether this is right or wrong. He's only thinking about the glory. He literally imagines creating a new species that will worship him as a god. It's just an unbelievable level of self-importance. And this whole quest just reveals how incredibly selfish he is. He fully admits that he's ignoring worried letters from his family. He knows they're anxious. He knows he's hurting them, but he just can't be bothered. His great work is more important than their feelings. He picks his obsession over his family every single time. So finally, the big night arrives. On a dreary evening in November, Victor flips the switch and brings his creation to life.
But that glorious dream he spent 2 years chasing, it doesn't just fade, it shatters, instantly, into an absolute nightmare. The difference between what he wanted and what he got is just staggering. He says he picked the features to be beautiful, flowing black hair, pearly white teeth, but the reality is hideous. Yellow skin stretched so tight you can see the muscles underneath, watery eyes, thin black lips. The beautiful dream vanishes, and all he feels is horror and disgust. After he runs out of the room, Victor has this absolutely horrific nightmare. He dreams he's kissing Elizabeth, but she turns into the rotting corpse of his dead mother. I mean, wow. This tells you everything about what's going on in his head. He tried to conquer death, but all he did was create more decay. He messed with the natural order of things, and his subconscious is screaming at him. So what does our brilliant creator do next? He runs. He literally runs away, abandoning his creation, this newborn being all alone in his apartment. And then his friend Henry Clerval shows up, just in time to see Victor completely collapse into a fever that lasts for months. So his first act as a creator is to abandon his child, and his next act is to fall apart and let his neglected friend take care of him. Victor eventually gets better, thanks to Henry, but he never says a word about what he did. He just tries to forget it, to pretend it was all a bad dream. But you can't just run away from a secret like that. And it's not long before the consequences of his actions find their way back to his perfect little family in Geneva. Right when Victor's getting ready to finally go home, he gets a letter from his father. And the news is devastating. His youngest brother, William, this sweet little kid, has been murdered, strangled in a field. The family is just completely shattered. And then it gets worse. Justine Moritz, a servant the family loves like one of their own, gets accused of the murder. The evidence against her looks really bad. She was seen near the spot, she was out all night, and the nail in the coffin, a locket that William was wearing, is found in her pocket. On his way home, in the middle of a thunderstorm, Victor sees his creature for a split second, and he knows. He knows without a doubt that it killed William. He knows Justine is innocent. So does he say anything? Nope, not a word. He keeps his mouth shut because he's terrified people will think he's insane if he tells them the truth. He puts his own reputation ahead of Justine's life. He knows he's responsible. He even calls himself the true murderer. He feels all this guilt, this never-dying worm in his heart. But it's all internal. He feels bad, but he doesn't do anything. He stands by and watches as an innocent woman is convicted and executed for a crime he knows she didn't commit, all to protect his secret. And that really brings us to the biggest question of this whole first part of the book. Yeah, Victor's ambition physically created a monster, but his selfishness, his cowardice, his complete failure to take responsibility, well, that reveals a whole different kind of monster, doesn't it? So you have to ask yourself, who is the real monster in this story?